ensayas rápido, no te sabes poner pie. Lo ensayas rápido, no te sabes poner pie.
Welcome back to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small. Our guest today is James Neese. We're talking about the economy. James, last segment, I never mentioned Marx at all. All I was talking about was the alienation of people from employment and from jobs. I didn't say means of production. I didn't say labor. I was talking about how people in this country, and I think now that you mention it, Marx might have predicted that the United States would develop more along the lines of what he saw historically than any other country. But I never said anything about Marx. People think their jobs, for the most part, suck.
I mean, you didn't say Marx, but like you said words like alienation, which the very first person to ever say, like, well, workers become alienated from their means of production, from their jobs. You're no longer craftsmen. That was very Marxist from like what he actually written in his books, like Das Kapital Manifesto. So even though like you didn't say it, I'm like, you know, all these philosophy classes, like none of this argument seems familiar. Where did I do that one?
Okay, but
James, you're not the first one to call Marx a communist.
I'm not calling him a communist. I'm just saying like, I know where he's getting what literature he's using. So I'm like, yeah.
No, I'm talking about just life experience. Listening to people and working and hearing people talk about, oh, my job sucks. I hope I hit the lotto this weekend. Now, I've been a professional. I enjoy what I do for a living. But a lot of people are working because they got a job right out of high school. They were lucky to get that job. It paid well at the time. They got pregnant or they got their girlfriend pregnant. One or the other happened. And so they've got to keep that job. And then they get another kid, and that job went south, but they got another one, and it makes more money, but they never envisioned themselves as selling, you know, insulation or siding or something. They didn't view themselves when they were a kid as being a future salesman of siding. They thought they were going to be a baseball player or sail a ship or something.
I mean, well, I think all people, especially just like young people and people that are tired of the workforce, kind of want to do their own thing. Like, you know, there's a lot of home-based businesses today. You work out of home, sell this on the internet. You know, it uses Magento software to do that. A lot of people actually want to own what they do. Like, you know, it's no longer you can be, I'm a blacksmith, so I make blacksmith things, or I'm a horseshoe maker, so I make horseshoes, or I'm a tanner, I tan skin. All that's kind of, you know,
I'm a shrubber.
Yeah.
I'm a dentist is shrubber.
Yeah, you no longer have those like distinct titles. You know, everything's done by a corporation. Like canning's done by corporations that handle the cows that you go up the public canning.
Yeah, but we have everything is so mechanized, and the overhead would be so great. It would be virtually impossible for people to manufacture goods for other people. And we have so many people that the jobs that would be available, they're taken by machines.
That frees up people to do other things.
Like the unemployed.
There's that. But we've had, going through an industrial revolution, we have more mechanization. That doesn't necessarily keep unemployment. If that was the case, we'd have 80% unemployment.
Where do people get work when they've been displaced by a machine?
They move to another part of the economy, and the economy grows.
Okay, those are nice sounding words.
I cannot explain why the unemployment rate isn't huge because we have more machines now.
It's actually larger than 8.1%. A lot of those people are off the charts because they've given up on jobs. A lot of people are disabled and will find means by which they can get declared disabled. I'm not saying that our disability laws are somehow wrong, but people will get declared disabled so that they're no longer considered employed. They've got a paycheck now. I mean, they've got sustenance. People have a right to exist. You know, so There are a lot of people who are unemployed. We have a huge number of people. 5% of the people in the United States population, some huge amount of people who are in prisons. We have 25% of the world's prison population with only 5% of its people. So those people are unemployed, but we've created a legal system whereby they've been declared unemployed.
Well, they're not really unemployed. The prison's an industry. Like when you're in prison, you make things. Like if you want freedom to go to here a little bit more, or you want commissary to buy like honey buns or Mountain Dew or Pepsi, you have to do work there. It's you stamp your license plates, it's tilling these gardens for this. You're paying like 7, 8, 9, 12 cents an hour just to do these menial tasks doing laundry. But there's corporate sponsors for that. Like corporations are like, well, I'm gonna go into prison, like making people do it. It helps the state, it helps the people, I guess, to say less likely to rescind. But
yeah, but see, half the people are there for drug offenses, which if you legalized all drugs, they wouldn't be in prison. But then you have to look, Paul, where are the jobs then? How do you create jobs? They're going overseas to manufacture.
The type of jobs we have now are far different than we had in the 1940s. It's a continued evolution. We have IT jobs we didn't have in the 40s. The fact is, you become more efficient, parts of the economy become mechanized. That leads to other jobs out there, like the IT jobs.
I mean, how do you get more efficient? It's a question. Like the United States ranks like in not even in the top 10 for math and science. I mean, we're beaten by Korea, we're beaten by Japan, we're beaten by Sweden. Every other country that's a modern industrial nation that has growth in GDP, we're being beaten out. We're almost to the point where we're next to countries that are losing GDP. So, like, how do we fix our math and our science education system to get people interested in doing it? Because, like, when I was a student in high school, I loved English. It's just like, we'll just talk about books. I love government. Let's just argue all day. I love English. Let's just argue all day. But it's like, time to go to, like, algebra 2. And I'm just cringing, It's like actual stuff I have to think. Actual stuff I can't just bullshit my way through.
I liked all those other classes, but I liked algebra, too.
Yeah, but you're nerding it out. I mean, that's the problem. You like math, you're a nerd, and there's stigma to it as well.
Well, that's culturally, that's a good point. There is a stigma to it because in our culture, people are if you are good at mathematics, well, there's a stereotype you're into, and that's not necessarily a popular image. Whereas if you're a jock, whereas if you're, a real American kid, you really don't like school. I mean, that's really one thing that's the ethos, I think, or the anti-ethos.
But then think of like why kids eventually, like when they're teenagers, it's like, if I want a job, I want to make a lot of money, So it's like you go to college and major in something. It's like I want to major in pharmacy, dentistry. I want to major in law. I want to major in just very basic things where you're not very math inclined. So you do a lot of these social sciences, you do a lot of these medical science things where you just get a degree in the medical field as like a nurse, where you're making like 40, 60K a year. So it's fine, I make money, I do this. But you're not people in there that's just like, they're 17 years old. It's like, I want to be a nuclear physicist. They might say because it's like, well, it's a unique job, but they don't put the effort to do that. They don't like take the advanced physics classes, the advanced chemistry classes.
And part of the problem, I think, is colleges don't tell people what the job market is for some of those jobs. So, go and get a degree in history, and you go out and teach history, but there aren't that many jobs out there.
Or they lie about it.
They lie, exactly.
But see, when my undergrad, we were told my first day on campus that we had the third highest income of alumni in the country, yada yada yada. But the dean who was giving the welcoming speech said the value is not in the fact you're going to have specific skills that you acquire here. You're going to learn how to think, and that's why courses like history and philosophy and anthropology are really important. We're freaking out as a country because economically we're not able to compete with other countries. And we're saying, well, we need to emphasize math and science. No, we have to emphasize learning. And learning overall has been something that's been discouraged. And I think that we need to put more emphasis on that. I think that's why we have to have, we're talking about economics here, but we're going into education. I think that we have to guarantee if a kid is smart enough and able to clear whatever hurdles for education, you guarantee that kid his education or her education as far as they can go. If that means getting a PhD in anthropology, well, we need anthropologists. If that means getting an MD, we need MDs. Because all those factors lead into a better society and a better economy.
And where you and I differ, you think that college is about teaching people how to exist in the world in terms of having knowledge and
how to think.
And to me, and how to think, you said that better. To me, college is about training people for the jobs that are out there. And it's all nice to go out and get a major on music appreciation, but they can't translate into a job. That maybe not the sort of thing college is steering.
That's how it's kind of geared toward the last century. I mean, you go back to like the 700s, 1600s, universities really weren't career oriented. You know, it's like I go to university, I'm hanging with Isaac Newton. You know, so university taught you to be an innovator. Like, it's like I go here, I learn from these people that know these specific things, these specific theories. I learn from that. I work with them. I develop these things. So we always taught in university, like, you know, back in the day, like, you have to be an innovator. You have to do something to create the world and make the world a little bit better, make some innovations, you know. But now it's like, you know, you go to college, it's like, what's the hot ticket? It's like, well, nursing's pretty hot. So like you have 90, 100 kids that are in like 2 nursing classes that are just stocked full of kids that it's just like they can't get everybody in the nursing program. And then it goes back to the infrastructure. It's like you don't have the infrastructure after these kids graduate to, you know, deploy them in certain states. So you get nursing students that graduate from like Ivy Tech, you know, and it's like, well, let's go apply for a job. It's like nothing's hiring unless you want the $7, $8 an hour nursing home job.
Or move to North Dakota.
Yeah. You have to move. Like go to North Dakota, Texas. Texas is really big on like hiring nursing staff.
And let's talk about an environment where somebody of progressive mindset would not want to move unless it's the Austin area, and that's Texas.
The experience in law school, which Mark has experienced, is a prime example of not teaching you things you're going to use later on. Supposedly they teach us to think like a lawyer. They don't teach you how to file, you know, file for continuance, how to file various motions. They learn all the job.
My first case, I represented several people who had been arrested for public intoxication at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in May. Imagine that. I walked into court, and I was very, you know, proud of the fact I'm a lawyer, and I walked up to the bailiff, told him the cases I was on, and he said, okay, filed an appearance. And I said, what's an appearance? He handed me 4 yellow cards. Those are the things that they used for appearances at the time. And the bailiff told me how to file an appearance in court. We didn't learn that in law school.
There's so many things they don't teach you how to practice law. You come out with a law degree, pass the bar. You're a law practice case because you learn on the job, and it's a very dangerous way to do the possibility of a malpractice lawsuit.
I guess you'd have to learn on the job. I mean, most things you do, I mean, even if you major in like something simple as philosophy, which is like, we'll just talk about ethics, we'll just talk about morality. When you actually apply for a job in philosophy, which mostly is like ethics boards, which are like hospitals or at different companies, how do you deal with situations like this, liability issues, like, is it right for us to do this? Or even on the higher level, like talking about stem cell research, like, you have no experience in these public policies. You just have like, you know, well, is this type of theory? Is this type of thought process?
We've got to wrap it up, but I was going to say, in terms of like prep for it, yeah, that's why you do bombs in undergrad and think about ethics. We're going to close here. I'm sorry to make references like this. This has been Civil Discourse Now. We've been talking about economics, philosophy, theology, everything across